Mic's on. Okay.
Oh, you're back. You're back. Okay.
We're back. We're back online. Very sorry, everyone.
All right.
Disappointing. Look for the stitch.
Whatever.
Yeah. We got 7 back. 7 out of 12 ain't bad.
All right.
And I'd love to do this again, if we can't finish the conversation.
Oh,
Yeah.
so would we. So would we.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to.
Okay. So, DJ, I'm going to pin you, and let's go ahead and start it up from. You wanted to reinforce your disclaimer. So go ahead and do that now.
Yeah, just wanted to mention that I what I'm saying here are my words and my opinions, and they do not represent my current, past, or future employer.
Wonderful.
Okay.
So,
All right. So
you,
covered
you
your
were gonna,
ass now.
yeah, you were going to tell us a little bit about the planning zones, and so we left the conversation off at the planning zones.
Yes, yes. Oh boy, I'm trying to think about what I mentioned there, but
Some people will have to shelter in place, and some people will have to,
yeah.
yeah.
I think for a lot of people, at least when it comes to this planning in the past, the default has been like, okay, evacuate if you live in this area, and that even though all of our recommendations that were given via like the EPA, specifically the EPA is one that gives recommendations actually, are either shelter in place or evacuation or evacuate. If the radiation levels get to 1 to 5R, those are your options for protective action. In my opinion, we should actually be leaning more towards the shelter in place as a primary protective action, unless in some sort of circumstance where radiation levels are really high, we decide to go to evacuation. Now, I should mention, if it's a shelter in place, there were some lessons learned in Fukushima where they actually did do a shelter in place from the 20 to 30 kilometer area away from the plant, and they did that for, I want to say, 1 to 2 days, and it actually started to kind of really affect that population, because tell people not to leave their homes for 2 days. That's a lot of time. I think though we've learned from COVID we can do that actually, but in fact I just got done with isolation for a whole week, and without leaving my home for 2 days. But we actually had still people leaving and doing grocery delivery and stuff. But if we decide to go towards more shelter in place, we need to have good communication of like, hey, make sure that you have enough of your medication at home or food on hand to go for 2 days at a time. I think that's just a good emergency planning practice in general, honestly. But yeah, any other questions on that? I can't remember where we were going with that and what we missed.
Chris had a question.
Yeah. Just toss this in. You mentioned 1 to 5 rad. I know there's time, distance, and shielding. So just throwing an amount out isn't the full story, but in general, isn't it close to 100 rad before it's immediately dangerous for people?
So that would be the level at which acute radiation syndrome could show itself in a population. I mean, you could see it maybe at lower levels, but at just very minor. That would be for the acute effects, or those effects that happen that you can notice it right away. Those ones, a lot of our recommendations are written around trying to prevent those prompt effects, those acute effects. So very conservative 1 to 5R, right? To try avoiding those effects. At the same time, we're also weighing in some of those more long-term effects, the cancer effects that happen. That more if you're for a prompt dose of radiation happen more at the 10R. So that I think you're weighing both of those things, those prompt effects and those more long-term effects into that evacuation, and so that's why they go for the more 1 to 5R. Do something.
And let's sort of circle around to that. So this level of 10R, that is that more or less 10 millisieverts? I know that the units are not exactly the same, but roughly are they similar?
It's actually 100 millisieverts if you do the
so
math.
So 10R roughly corresponds to the 100 millisieverts, which we know from literature is the lowest dose at which any cancers have been observed. And so the question is...
Correct. That's annually, though. That's annually, right. not in one shot.
I mean, that was specifically from the Japanese bombings, which was a one-shot thing.
Okay.
Instantaneous, yeah.
And this is the whole conversation when it comes to radiation and health impacts is what is the distinction between acute dose and chronic dose? And I think from the other symposiums I've attended and recorded is we do not have sufficient data, and it is an enormous task in order to gather sufficient data to disprove this conjecture that chronic radiation exposure is the same as acute exposure. Is that accurate?
It is very hard. You're right to kind of parse those two out. We have we do in our calculations, we do take into account the difference between a prompt dose and your more long-term dose that's maybe you got over a year, and it's the dose rate effectiveness factor is what we call it, DDER or DDEF, anyways, so usually we say, I think it's the Bayer or the National Academy of Science assigns like 1.5 as a factor. So from more of those long term, like let's say you had 10, pick your unit, long-term dose, if it was achieved in a short term, so like promptly, like right away in one day, it'd be more like 15. Pick your units in the effects that it got. So we do in our calculations to determine what was the detriment from that radiation. We do take into account whether or not it was over a long term or over a short term. Some places I think do 2 as a factor. Your question or not, but
yeah,
wonderful. So that is sort of part of the evidence that we're still developing around this, and I don't think that we will be able to achieve that answer quickly. But let me steer this a little bit. We have in medicine we have the idea of an intervention and the cost of an intervention versus the risk on the person. And how does that factor into the policy making apparatus, in your opinion?
Not enough, in my opinion. I believe it absolutely is true. The reason why I have a job is not because radiation presents and nuclear plant accidents present a hazard that is particularly hazardous or particularly dangerous to the public, or a high risk or a high likelihood. It has to do more with that public perception of radiation and nuclear. So we tend to give a lot more weight to a radiation hazard than a chemical hazard or a biological hazard. So I don't think we do it enough. We don't weigh the risks versus benefits, the risks of evacuation or relocation versus the detriment of the radiation. We just don't do that enough, in my opinion, because of the fact that the population has a perception, and we're not willing for some reason to address that perception. We just say they have a perception, so therefore we need to do something about it, and we need to have all of this planning in place. That's one of my real big pet peeves about the fact that we do that.
Yeah, and just to knock this out of the park, is there a public perception deficit when it comes to different sources of radiation?
Yes, like whether or not it comes from a natural source or radon, or from nuclear power, man-made,
or medicine. Right? Even the or difference medicine. Between medicine, medical accidents, and nuclear energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're hitting on some events that have happened specifically in Washington, right? Right. There have been incidents that involve nuclear medicine and facilities like at a hospital in Washington that don't really give a bunch of, or don't, the population aren't particularly worried about it as much as they would from, say, 3 Mile Island. They were very concerned about 3 Mile Island, even though it was very minor doses to the public. They tend to weigh a nuclear power risk greater than any other use of radiation, like X-rays, right? For dental X-rays. So, yes, I think there is a major deficit in the population's understanding about that and that risk versus benefits, and that's one of the reasons why I do what I do on social media. Yes,
wonderful. So Gabe has his hand up. Gabe, why don't you go ahead? And unfortunately, we are short in time. We're gonna let DJ go get back to his daily activities. And if you would, Gabe, close us out, and then we'll let DJ give us his closing thoughts.
Okay. Well, let's say you decide to call an evacuation. When would it be safe for people to come back? That's my whole question.
Yep. Exactly. And that's the big thing. So evacuation, that's trying to avoid that plume of radioactive material that might be coming out of a plant. That plant or that plume will deposit some of that radioactive material behind. The dose that you would get from that deposition is significantly lower than the dose of that plume that's passing by, right? So you avoid that plume by evacuating people or having them shelter in place. And then the residual radioactive material that's left over there, you have to do some math, and you determine what's the dose to that person if they are living in their homes, as well as doing a little bit of travel outside of their homes, right? Because you're not gonna stay in that one spot all the time. We give a certain radiation dose that 2 rem per year, or the 20 millisieverts per year, is that recommendation from like the ICRP and also from the EPA that protective action should be taken. People seem to like to think that means that we should relocate them, meaning those people that evacuated can't go back to their homes. basically. I believe that numbers should be maybe raised higher, and we should take into account the fact that they're not going to stay in that place all the time, and then there's a protection factor from living in your home. Those numbers that we calculate are assuming you're not inside your home. You're what's called the fence post man. You're standing outside without any clothes on, 24/7 in that one spot, absorbing all of that radiation. And it's completely ridiculous assumption. We should take into account some of those protection factors that you would get, and a lot of those calculations we do, they do not take into account that. So, in my opinion, we should get them home as soon as possible. We should do communication with them, showing them that, okay, here are the risks from going back to your home from the radiation. Here are the risks if you don't go back, because there are absolutely risks from just that relocation, the psychological risks. And here are some comparisons to some other risks. Let's say you decided to not go back to your home because it was 2 REM per year, and you decided to move to Tokyo or some other city that's nearby, right? And now you're exposed to the increased pollution in that area. Here's the detriment that you would get from that. And really, it needs to be a conversation with the public in that area saying, this is what's here. Here's what would happen if you relocated, and here's to put things into context. I think then you can make a informed decision. The public is informed, and in my opinion, the more likely thing that will happen is they'll say, wait a minute, like, why would I leave my home if this is the detriment from radiation, assuming even the linear no threshold, which I know we could probably have a huge conversation about that, even assuming that, compared to living in a city, a relatively clean city such as Tokyo, which would have a higher detriment. So I know I said a lot there, but I think having an informed decision with that with the public is the big thing to do there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much for being generous with your time, DJ.
Yep.
Let's let you introduce your TikTok as you close out. You are on TikTok as the Rad Guy Glows. Take it away.
Yes. You can find me on TikTok as at the Rad Guy Glows. I'm on Twitter at the Rad Guy 5. If you just search me on YouTube as the Rad Guy, I'll probably be the first one that pops up. Also on Facebook, I'm starting to put out a lot more content. I've taken 3 months off, and I'm restarting that up, and you can see all sorts of things going on. I'm going to be putting out a video on Monday about the recent uranium found at the Heathrow Airport. So exciting stuff.
That's amazing, and your timely communication on some of these topics is really appreciated, especially on TikTok. And we wish you all the success. Again, DJ, the Rad Guy, thank you so much for being with us today. And we're going to let you get out of here and get back to your daily activities.
All right. Thank you so much. I hope to talk to you all again sometime soon.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I would
great.
love that.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So thank you, everyone, for sticking around, bearing with my technical problems. I've been holding off a software upgrade, and it seems like I've got nothing to lose by going forward with that. So next week, we'll be running completely new software. I might even reinstall. I don't know. I'm tempted to reinstall Windows at this point. But so yeah, anyone have any closing thoughts on this topic of protection and communication? Sorry, I missed my cough button too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've maybe I'm a broken record on this. I've said this a couple dozen times in the past, various places, but I really feel that the underlying issue with people who are anti-nuclear or hesitant about nuclear. The underlying issue is a fundamental misunderstanding of radiation, what it is and how it can affect us, and how easily we can recuperate from moderate amounts of radiation exposure. And so I think DJ is doing fantastic work in that area. And if people want to have a little fun with DJ's TikToks, look up his Fiestaware. He's very excited about Fiestaware.
Yeah, DJ touched upon it also when he mentioned contexts. And it goes to that fundamental misunderstanding with radiation. People don't really get what the different levels are in between, acute versus chronic, and how effective dose like REM and sieverts translates into what you might be exposed to over X amount of time. They only see, numbers, this. And we didn't get a chance to explore that at all with this, and and make proper comparisons between what this dose acute is equivalent to. Like, this is a dental X-ray, this is a CAT scan, versus long-term doses like what you might experience in certain cities or locales around the world, like Guarapari Beach. Guarapari Beach, if it wasn't for the fact that if it was in the United States, it would be regulated as a toxic site, most likely.
Possibly.
So, yeah, that and yet millions of people go to that beach every year.
So let's give a quick thanks. We had a lot of new people follow DJ from his social networks and really reach out and find us on Twitch here. So I want to say a special thanks to Cybernetic Elf, the Cryptech, Super Whip, and Rocket TTX. Thank you for the follow. Thanks for supporting us here on Twitch. Check out the Eco Modernist channel live on YouTube and the Eco-Modernist Society of North America on Facebook. Again, I'm Carl, and I'm joined by Gabe, Chris, and William here, and we're so thankful to have so many new people join us on this topic of radiation and nuclear safety communication. It's been an interesting show, and we're definitely going to catch up with DJ one more time in the future and sort of delve further into his experience. I know that we had you got more thoughts, Chris?
I just got tossed in there on the interwebs. We are ESNA.earth, Vermont Society of North America. ESNA.earth.
Wonderful.
Right.
So yeah, thank you so much for everyone for showing up. How do you folks feel? I mean, we're about we got 10 minutes of interruptions, unfortunately, but anything I hesitate to put anything on screen. Unstable system.
We on or off right now? We're off the air.
We're on the air still. I'll let you know that when we raid out.
Okay.
We have maybe a few corrections. Yesterday, we spoke to. Last week we spoke to Mike Stass from Damn the Matrix, and there is a bit of a disagreement still between us on like the difference between alternating and direct current. And it's right there. If you look up in any encyclopedia, and I was ready to sort of go through it, you look up in any encyclopedia, the development of a direct current transmission network versus an alternating current transmission network, it's night and day. And so we have yes, there are conversion losses going from DC to AC. So if you have a home DC system, that kind of makes sense. But a distribution over longer than a couple of miles, and you have to have massive cables in order to prevent transmission loss in direct current. And in alternating current, we regularly step up the voltage and then step it down when it comes back to customers. So this is something that is absolutely in the favor of alternating current and in the favor of a distribution network that allows nuclear plants to exist. We can distribute alternating current at high voltage over hundreds of miles with less than 5 to 10% transmission loss. And so that's how Columbia Generating Station can power a portion of the city of Seattle.
Yeah, the program, I mean, the back and forth was really, in a nutshell, making assumptions about the future that you can't make, as opposed to exploring the possibilities. And even if the assumptions were totally bad and the degrowth people were right, that's not an argument to not, do everything in your power to not make that happen, which is what we're about. So it's not even an argument. I don't get what you do as far as degrowth goes. If it's just going to hit us, what could you even do about it?
I think degrowth needs to be focused on the quality of life we have. We don't need to grow exponentially for the sake of growing. We just need to have enough to have decent lives. And as the population begins to decline after the 2060s, roughly, according to our world and data, but as the population begins to decline, then yes, as long as we have a nice middle class existence for 80-90% of the population, then GDP will eventually start to go down. There will be degrowth, but it doesn't need to be uncontrolled. It doesn't necessarily mean everyone go back to living in the forests and or having outdoor lavatories. But
there's a fund. I take such issue with the whole degrowth hypothesis. Degrowth is not it's not an unavoidable or even a probable end. It's a result of policy. Because it's so directly tied to the propensity for human beings to breed at certain rates based around their standard of living and certain other factors that disincentivize having offspring. As a general rule, as standard of living increases, number of fertility rates go down. But that's a multi-dimensional problem in that it's not just standard of living. It's that children begin to become a greater burden as you have fewer and you put more resources into each one. And there's no mechanism in place to alleviate that extra burden.
Yeah.
You might have had I think we might have actually touched on this on a previous episode from like months ago, where I was talking about how our entire social safety net and Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, everything like that across all the modern industrialized countries is in fact front-loaded to benefit people getting benefits now who are reaching end of life now. Basically, people are feeding into the system to pay the current benefits instead of loading it to where the kids are basically getting what they need to thrive later at the beginning. So yeah, like I said, it's a policy issue, and degrowth is not inevitable.
I don't think it is either.
Yeah, and so this is the hypothesis of Mike Stass from Damn the Matrix, as well as let me make sure that I get the.
Well, it's not just him. It's this.
Yeah. Let's make sure that I get this right.
He's actually more moderate than a lot of degrowth I've seen.
I don't know that I'd say he's I think that Mike Stass has a very severe position on.
Well, relatively speaking.
Yeah,
relatively
on
speaking.
Degrowth, and there are academics, and let's talk about very specifically. Because some people in chat are getting a little big mad about this idea that people take degrowth as a serious prescription for as a climate solution. And if you go to a Sierra Club meeting, this is their policy. This has been Sierra Club's policy since 10 years after its founding. It's literally keep people out of our parks, keep them out of our mountains, so that those of us who want to explore nature can do so. That is literally the founding principle of Sierra Club, right? And the founding principle of 350 was, of course, we have to keep our CO2, but the policy prescription is not more clean energy. It is a tiny bit of clean energy, and you have to reduce the amount of consumption. And their policy combination is fewer people on Earth combined with more renewable energy use combined with extreme efficiency. And those are the policy prescriptions of these various NGOs. And so you just have to look very carefully at what the NGOs' mandatory policies are. As far as academics go, just one last thing. Jason Hickel, and if you look, Jason Hickel is the degrowth darling. So just look up what everyone are pointing to in terms of the policy masters and who they indicate are the correct policy positions to take. Jason Hickel will prescribe things like a book that talks about organizational changes, rebelling from capitalism, rebelling from the growth of markets, and rebelling against intensified agriculture. And so that right there, rebelling against the idea of intensified agriculture means that you're living in smaller farming communities. Basically, everyone should be Amish. I'm not even joking. This is the prescription of folks like Jason Hickel. And it is not at all a conspiracy theory. It is literally in the books that Jason Hickel will point to and say, this is a solution. This is how we achieve degrowth. And we're providing the alternative, which is urbanization, more mass transit, more baseload clean energy sources like nuclear, more use of modern medicine, because if we are better connected and better intensified in terms of our living situation, we have to take care of that, and better intensified agriculture so that we can leave more of the earth to wilderness. And so we again need modern medicine to make sure we don't have an outbreak of any disease vectors in our food supplies. And so these are literally, this is night and day, the difference between eco-modernism and degrowth. We'll be happy to have you here, Chatter, when we cover this topic in depth in the future. As well, we're constantly reaching out to new channels to have this discussion. I hope to talk to Environmental Coffee House and other doomer environmentalists about the topic of degrowth. Go ahead, Gabe. Gabe, I think you're muted now for some reason.
I muted myself. I was looking up something. I don't want to make noise. It's a fun topic. And actually, I think it's a little useful in a sense that there are resource constraints, and that it's an interesting to see what they are, how severe they are, to give us an understanding of what we're up against. So, I mean, that is a real thing. But it's not, it's not something that we could, that's just a game stopper. And by the way, I was going to mention that Our Changing Climate, which did a hit piece on eco-modernism, they just came out with a good video about why the overpopulation is a myth. So I just saw it last night. I would recommend it.
I'll look that
Yeah,
up.
we'll
Art changing
share it on
climate
social.
on overpopulation.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
I just saying Gabriel should share that on our Facebook page.
Yeah, I will.
That
I
way
will.
people can go to our Facebook page to find it.
Yeah, I will. I'll do that, and I'll share it on our Twitter as well. I'll do that later on today.
Thank you.
Awesome. So there's some chatters here that maybe, hey, Rocket, let's take this to DMs and maybe I can get you engaged on the topic directly. I'll send you my Twitter, or you can find my Twitter. It is Carl Alex Pauls on Twitter, and then we can sort of hash out. So my DMs are open. I'm happy to sort of elevate the conversation, but we're about out of time for our 1 hour podcast. I clearly have to upgrade, so I'm going to go through upgrading to OBS 29. I'm fantastically excited for that. I think I'm going to change my my capture on this machine so that I can bring in 2 independent video sources, and we'll see how that's going to work out as well. Just having multiple machines for a more stable stream is going to be my goal for the next week. So yeah, let's. I'm going to find someone to raid out to here on Twitch. Thank you again for joining us on the Eco Modernist channel live. Check us out on ESNA.earth, our website, ESNA.earth. Check us out on Facebook, Eco Modernist Society of North America. Check us out on YouTube, the Eco Modernist channel, and right here on Twitch, I am Soyaddle. I'm bringing you the Eco Modernist channel live. Thanks again, everyone, and we will see you next week on Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern.
I want to speak to you about a new organization called the Eco Modernist Society of North America. I'm here because we are in the midst of a potentially monumental ecological crisis. It is only through a new environmentalism 2.0 that progress can be made. We believe that our only hope for human advancement and even human survival is through the exponential advance of science in the service of humanity. Eco-modernism is a new environmental paradigm which looks to reverse the fear of nuclear power and scientific progress in general. Ecology-based modernism is the most direct way to define it. Eco-modernism as a philosophy is described in the Eco-Modernist Manifesto. We believe humanity should not be rejecting technological progress, but rather separate our impacts from nature through the responsible use of technology and urbanization. Urbanization is an unstoppable worldwide trend and the best solution to many environmental problems. It offers sustainable development for the human population and is a historic antidote to both deforestation and species extinction as humans move away from using wildlife as their protein source. Vertical, urban, high-rise architecture minimizes the use of land, resources, and energy, enabling walkable cities that facilitates the more efficient use of mass public transit as well. It must be emphasized that our support for technological solutions is definitely not about defending industrial polluters, nor does our defense of technology imply that we just need to sit back and let things take care of themselves. To the contrary, we believe that humanity is at a crossroads that severely threatens our future on this planet. I hope by now you understand the worthiness of our cause. Eco-modernism is really only a philosophy at this time. I want to talk to you about the necessity of turning it into a movement, which will be part of the larger environmentalist movement. For it is only through our presence and participation that there can be any hope of moving environmentalism in the right direction. Our aim is not to divide the environmental movement, but rather to multiply its numbers with the incorporation of many scientific and educational communities that is working to both build chapters of eco-modernist societies and support our growth worldwide.